And we are live. Hi there, everyone. How the heck you doing this fine day? Steve Dotto here, along with April. We are joining you for Webinar Wednesday, or you're joining us, I guess, for Webinar Wednesday. Just checking my room here.
Welcome, everybody.
There we go. Good. That is working. Good stuff. Excellent. How's everybody? How are you, April?
I'm good. I'm good. I'm excited for today. How are you doing?
Yeah, well, you should be excited for today because today's topic was your idea. So no pressure. You're the one that initially said it. So everybody let us know where you're in from. I see John from St. Catharines and Adele from the Philippines. Hey, how are you? Michael from Texas and Robert from Toronto. Andrew from Connecticut and Canmore, Alberta. We have Dave. Was it Dave? No, Brent. Yeah, moving fast now. I can't keep up. We've got a really good topic today. I think we have an incredibly useful topic today. One that we've obviously talked about a little bit in the past, and that we all continue to talk about as far as the social marketing side of these webinars goes. We're going to be talking about building your email list and why email lists are so important for your business. I'm going to be doing things a little bit different than normal today. I didn't pre-record the main demo. The main reason I didn't pre-record the main demo is my number one resource for understanding what happens in the world of email software, as I've used quite a few packages, but April lives in that world. So we're going to rely heavily on April's expertise today as we go ahead. Why are people talking about earthquakes?
No, somebody asked if you had an earthquake.
Oh, there was two relatively big earthquakes, well off the coast of Vancouver Island on Monday, very early in the morning. They were like 2 or 3 that were like in close succession, or a big one and a couple of aftershocks. There was no tsunami warning. There was no damage. It didn't actually get felt anywhere where people live, but they were off the coast of, they were in that subduction zone off the coast of Vancouver Island. So no, I'm still fine. We're still fine here. Although we've got the earthquake kit all set up, and we're, it's
6.6.
It's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when. But when can be 500 years from now is as likely as 5 minutes from now. So or 5,000 years from now, as far as geological terms go. So we just hope. All these pleasant conversations we're having. Why don't we talk about email stuff? Email stuff. What's that, April?
I know. Well, you know what? We definitely, I think, across the globe have been having weird weather. So.
Oh, weather. Yeah, no kidding. No kidding. Yes, Lou, back to Webinar Jam. Webinar Jam's kind of our home app that we kind of, we know so well. And so we will continue to test out others. We've got another webinar test coming, and I've got a webinar or a video that I'll be releasing about our experiences using Big Marker, which, by the way, I was a huge fan of. I really liked Big Marker. It is a winner in my mind. April wasn't quite as fond of it, but she's hard to please.
It's that German in me.
I really did like Big Marker. I liked a lot of the aspects of Big Marker as far as social marketing, etc. So, if anybody that's having any issues, just refresh your browser. If that doesn't work, reload your browser. If you can hear us. And maybe April, you can there we go. Let them know. So here's the plan for today. We are going to dive into the world of email marketing. Looking forward to your questions and comments as we go through. We're going to talk you through it today in a kind of a live stream rather than our normal pre-recorded demo. But we're going to talk about the basics. We'll talk about the basic tools, the why, and just trying to get you in the headspace of exactly how it should be fitting in your life. It's email list management and email list and building your email list is the most boring. It's like the broccoli of online marketing, but it's so important to our lives. Here's the issue. Here's the biggest issue. We are increasingly growing our businesses in the online space and social media, on Facebook, on Twitter, on Instagram, on YouTube. And in every single one of those cases, we are building our empires on rented ground. And they can disenfranchise us from our community at the stroke of a key. And more than that, our community can become disenchanted with the channel and move away, and we lose touch with them if that's our only avenue of communication. Case in point, what's going on with Facebook? Is there any single person here of the 224 people listening live at this moment who love Facebook? No, we are all incredibly pissed at Facebook. And we know it's not going to get better. It's just going to get worse because they are totally tone deaf. But how many of us rely on Facebook for a big portion of our reaching out to our business? John, no, we don't love it. I don't. Amen. So if we have to constantly be paying attention to migrating people from these social platforms, which are great for outreach. They are fantastic for growing your community. We have to constantly think about migrating those people into our own space. And the only space we have is a mail list. And I know it's boring, it's old school. Sometimes people are a little resistant to it because there's trust issues with how other online marketers have done things as we've gone ahead. But that's still the place that you have to build. And they say the money is in the list, and it indeed is. Your community that you have on your mail list will sustain you and will support you. So that's the big why. We have to do it. And it's the least sexy of all of the stuff that we have. It's not as much fun as webinars or live streaming or posting videos to YouTube. It's not as much fun as any of those sorts of things, building a list. And you also have a little bit of resistance because there's a trust issue. So you basically have to ask people if they trust you. So let's work our way through that. Do you have anything to add, April?
Yeah, I think it's always interesting to me because I do a lot on the small business side of social media classes. And my social media classes are way more attended than my email marketing classes. And when we talk about lists, and I think that, you're right on the money saying it's rented space. People work so hard at their fan following on these social channels, and they're thinking about quantity a lot of times more than quality. And really the quality of those fans is getting them on your list. And your whole premise of your social campaign should be about how can I get my audience engaging with me, but better yet, how can I get them on my list? Because if Facebook got shut down, and actually I got an email about a week ago from a small business owner, and they had an employee that set up their page and they weren't an admin on their page. They lost access to their page when the employee left. So now that's a pain in the butt to get that back. That's time spent. And if they actually had worked on some of their email list building, they would be much better off. So
and people can be removed from their list by accident themselves, or removed from their Facebook or YouTube accounts by accident, like you mentioned, or by some omission or by some false claim against them. There's just a ton of different ways that we can lose access to our community in those platforms. Not to mention those platforms themselves just messing up royally. I'm not 100% sure that somebody like Facebook is completely bulletproof from litigation from governments, especially with all of this stuff that we've seen where we're surrounding the fake news and how complicit they are in that. The entire scandal that they had about all of the fake news that was happening in 2016, it hasn't resolved itself yet, and we're going to see it happen again. Now, a change in government in America, in a different type of government coming in, they could actually be looking at something like Facebook saying, we can't have this kind of thing happen again. That's a possibility. I think it's a distant possibility, but what happens if Facebook suddenly is broken up? Maybe they break Facebook and Instagram up into separate business units, and all of a sudden momentum is lost. It happened to Microsoft, and Microsoft was as big an economic power as is Facebook today, and so I think we could see that sort of thing happen again. I'm not predicting that, don't get me wrong, and I don't want to get this into a political discussion about that either, but it's just there are so many different places that Facebook and all of our social platforms are at risk. So let's talk a little bit about the tools themselves. Now, it used to be that when we got to this point, we've done this topic a few times in the past, and it used to be that I just and actually April and I had a little meeting beforehand, and I said, so are we going to tell them the old school exactly? Because we always used to tell you to go to one of two tools to start building your email list and then go on from. But actually, before we do that, I should touch base. we should tell them exactly what an email list or an email tool will do for them. And they come in a variety of different, what do you like to call it the most? I mean, I always say email list software, or
it's actually called
CRM.
an email service provider.
Email service provider. That's good.
You know, I think one of the big things that people need to understand how an email service provider can help you is that the opportunity there is canned spam laws that an email service provider can help you to track your the tracking when somebody signs up on a website, that they help do some of the hard work for you, as opposed to you trying to collect them paper format over the phone, although you still can collect them that way. But an email service provider also gives you analytic tracking, where if you were to send an email, and actually this happened the other day, somebody sent me an email through Gmail, and they didn't blind copy everybody. So they sent out as many as they could through Gmail, and they tried to format an email, and it did not go well. And also I saw a whole bunch of emails. So there's a privacy thing, which email service providers kind of keep you in compliant with all the things around it, as well as the list building part.
Okay, so there's the compliance side of an email service provider, but then there's also the technical aspects of gathering. So they have to have mechanisms and physical kind of attributes in place that allow us to collect email addresses, embed registration forms on websites or in documents so that people can opt in to our list so that we have access to them. And then the best ones also allow us to manage those addresses in such a way as we can segment them into different categories. For example, if you had, if you were collecting, I just wanted to know about people that were interested in email software, I would put a tag on everybody who signed up for this particular webinar to identify that you're interested in this. And actually we did, because you signed up for this webinar. So we categorize people by the webinars that they sign up for, so we know what topics you're interested in. So in the future, if we are doing something specific to those topics, we can more aggressively let you know about those topics, because we know they're things that you are already interested in. So list segmentation is a huge part, and a really underserviced part early on in people's email career. Some email collecting career, they always just look at collecting addresses, but they don't look at segmentation. So we'll be talking about that in a moment. But they also have to give you the functionality to be able to communicate with your people and create transactions of some sort, such as creating some sort of a follow-up email sequence and funnel to send newsletters out, to be able to enable them to download different tools if they need them, and to create the functionality for that sort of stuff. And at the higher end, to be able to actually have e-commerce solutions built in where you can actually sell products and have them fulfill products. And some of the really advanced ones also integrate with your membership sites and manage that entire process. So they grow from just initially collecting names quickly through to collecting names that are segmented by category, through to collecting names and being able to email back to the names with newsletters and more elaborate sales funnels, and perhaps even at the end selling a product to people. My arms are as wide as they can go now. But that's kind of the hierarchy of what email service providers do. Right. Did I miss anything, April?
No, I think no, you're right on the money. I think the big thing that they add value to the most is analytics, because the analytics are my favorite.
Talk about that.
Analytics are my favorite because I think so many business owners never look at them. When you ask that question and you're in a room of 50 people, how many people actually review their analytics regularly? I could tell you probably about a quarter, because we get busy in our business. However, you're almost spinning your wheels if you're not looking at your analytics, because your analytics dictate how you communicate back to your audience. Again, like you're talking the segmentation of if you've set your email up and created a link, you can actually segment your audience from there for better tracking based on interests, open rates. But click-throughs are the best analytic on your reporting for an email service provider, because it truly tells you the content your audience is interested in. So analytics, I think, is probably, of all the things, obviously is top of mind awareness to your audience, but those analytics really give you all that hard work and kind of building those campaigns and those email broadcasts. That's where you can kind of see it come to light and see what's happening within within your email campaigns.
So I just created a quick poll. Let's ask you, do you currently have an email service provider? I'd like to know that. So I'm going to say yes, because I'm going to vote on my little system here. There we go. So do you currently have an email service provider? Do you have one in place already? Because April and I are about to start talking about the different email service provider options you have. And fortunately, there's a lot to choose from. Unfortunately, there's a lot to choose from.
Yeah, well,
there's a real two-edged sword there.
All those shiny pennies out there. Everybody has the latest and greatest shiny penny.
And here is something which didn't happen when I started in the business, but is happening more and more now, is so many different services are adding email service provider features to the service that in a lot of cases you get confused if you start taking a look at a product like a ClickFunnels, for example, that provides a lot of the functionality of an email service provider, but are not really an email service provider. They're a funnel provider, but they provide some of those tools. Even the software that we're using right now, Webinar Jam, provides a lot of functionality that an email service provider does, because we are collecting email addresses, we can save them, we can export them, we can segment them, we can do a follow-up emails, and we can even do a series of follow-up emails to people based on their interaction with us. Now, we can't manage an entire massive list, but everybody that's registered for a webinar, we can manage the exact same way as we do from an email service provider, and we can even add e-commerce to this equation. So it gets kind of confusing. So there it is. I'm going to end the poll now because we have a good feedback. So 56% of people have an email service provider, and 44% of you don't yet. That's good. And even those that have it, they're constantly evaluating whether or not they're in the right one. So let's go through.
The bigger question to that is how many are actually using it regularly?
Yes.
A lot of people have them, but they don't use them.
Yeah. Well, we won't ask that one yet, but we'll maybe I'll post that one in a few seconds. So let's go through the basic tool, the basic kind of what we consider to be the email service providers you should be considering, depending on where you are in your business. In your business growth. Now, there was a time not that long ago when we started this, we always talked about the exact same tools. We always started out with MailChimp as probably the tool that we advised the most. The reason is MailChimp is a fairly reliable service provider, but they allow you to start for free. And although they've been modifying how much you can do with it for free, we always thought free is good. So they allowed people to start for free. And then another very inexpensive tool that people would start with was Aweber, which is the tool that I actually started with. But it's one that it's fallen out of favor as far as I'm concerned. But those were the two that we always recommended people started with. And at the end of the day, we would definitely push people towards MailChimp as their introductory tool. And then we had intermediate tools and advanced. But when I ran it by April yesterday, I said, so we're just going to do the old Aweber MailChimp routine?
You forget constant contact.
No, we need a new vaudeville routine. Yes. And what did you say to me?
I said ConvertKit, and I know that there's been some commentary about ConvertKit in the chat here, so I was holding out to answer you on that. I think one of the things is, like I said, there's a lot of shiny pennies out there. I definitally MailChimp.
By the way, we don't have pennies in Canada anymore. We've taken them out of our system, so you're going to have to say shiny nickels.
Shiny. Okay, how about squirrely tools? They make you go like, woo, woo, woo.
Yeah.
MailChimp I still think is a great option. I like Constant Contact as a great option, but what I like about ConvertKit is I actually had the opportunity, I guess 2 years ago, to meet the founders, and I hesitated because they are a newer platform, because newer platforms always have great deliverability, and and they're trying to sell all of these things. But I've used it with a few of my clients, and what I like is that price point, it's affordable. I like that although it probably for some may have a little bit of a learning curve, what it does do is a step above the other ones. It has more automation opportunities to it. You can create forms. It definitely uses the if then this rule. For some of us, it could be a little bit of a learning curve, but I do really like it because of that functionality. The templates are definitely basic, but at the end of the day, it's like 67% of visuals don't render in an email. So you really don't want you want images in your email, but you don't want it heavy image based. Clean email templates, getting specific to the point. That's what I like about ConvertKit. It's very clean. And their deliverability I feel like it's comparable to others. It used to be, so I've been a partner with Constant Contact since 97. That's a long time. And before, like when I first started talking about email, it was like, oh, it's 98% deliverability. Then it went down to 96 deliverability. And I feel like a lot of tools, after they're pushed out all of this stuff, and you get spam, you get people that are spamming people, and it brings down that deliverability rate. So I would say ConvertKit's pretty comparable in terms of.
Let's just press pause for a moment. And I posted a comment by Adele while you were doing that, which she said, it almost quoted you, and she said, but the landing page features are limited. Was her only criticism, but she found it to be good for creating sequences. Now, what April's talking about is something which is very, very important. She was talking about deliverability. And this is something that we all need to pay attention to when we're choosing our email service provider, because what happens is, based on email service providers, how hard-ass they are with their clientele. What you'll find is a push-pull relationship with any email service provider. You're going to submit your list of people that are on your email list, and they're going to say, prove to me that you have permission to market to these people, Steve, because they don't want me sending a bunch of emails out that get flagged as spam, because then the email service provider gets a bad reputation. Google starts saying, oh, these guys send spam, and everybody that uses that email service provider gets painted by the same brush. This and it's going to happen. It's going to happen with every single one. But you wonder why they push back at you, saying, just how much permission do you have? Have you properly, have you used double opt-in? Are you following GDPR compliance? Are you being a fundamentally sound communicator in email and respecting people's privacy and et cetera? And there's always going to be a percentage of people that push it into the gray area and even into the dark gray and black area as far as spamming and sending it out. And we all suffer. So that is what we're talking about. Deliverability is how good an overall reputation the email service provider has. And here, older, more established email service providers are actually at a big disadvantage because they have a long history of having spammers back in the day before they paid as close attention as they do now. So that's an important consideration. Now, they all don't necessarily share accurately with you what their deliverability numbers are, but you get a sense.
That's why you have analytics. That's why you have analytics too.
So you look into your analytics and you see what your deliverability is and where your emails are going, et cetera. So that's an important point to consider. So
I do want to just, Katie was saying in the landing page functionality, I would agree. I think that it's not great within ConvertKit, but I also need everyone to remember, from an email service provider aspect, I definitely am a believer that not one tool is going to do everything for you. So, and so with MailChimp, with Constant Contact, MailChimp, or even ConvertKit, I use a landing page tool. Some bigger, higher end tools have landing page pieces in it, but I'll tell you what, I don't think any of them have mastered everything to keep it all in-house.
You're absolutely right.
So you always have to keep that in mind. And I did see somebody was asking if you can sell from ConvertKit. So you can be creative in your sales. I can tell you, my first sales, I didn't have a CRM or an email service provider that had a shopping cart feature to it. I did it through PayPal with a link, and I used my email, my Constant Contact autoresponder at the time.
Did I.
Yeah,
that's when I did it, because my first sales were with the Aweber and we didn't have it. So I would like to, we're going to press pause for again, a pause on talking about the tools themselves and talk a little bit more about the fullness of the space. And I want to talk what April was just talking about at that moment, which was using other tools and how other tools fit in the process. The most important other tool in your entire email service provider's business or kind of catchment area is your own web host. is your own website, because so often that's where you're going to be driving people to, and you're going to be asking people to join your mail list from reading your blog post, watching your videos, coming to a landing page which lives on your website. So website themes, like website the products that we use to build our website, you can create what we call landing pages. They're like sales pages where people opt in. Now, you all have opted in many, many times for our webinars by going through our landing pages. And those are created right within our website. Now some webinar platforms will create those, as well as landing page creation tools like Lead Pages or ClickFunnels, or the website tool itself. But at the end of the day, what has to happen is the email software has to be able to create basically just little bits of code that you can, little snippets that you can put in, so you can create opt-in boxes, and they will do them in a variety of different ways. But you need to be able to get those forms inserted in your email in your web page software somehow. So no two content creators, there are no two publishers on the internet have the exact same system. We all kind of MacGyver together our own system of how it all works. But understanding the pieces of the puzzle is really important. So a tool like ConvertKit, while it does have limited ability to create nice custom landing pages itself, it does create the basic forms that we need, that we can insert in our own landing pages, and then we can make them look as good or as pedestrian as we choose.
Well, and you're absolutely right. Websites are definitely the most important piece of, I feel like, within your emails, because what it does is it drives that organic traffic to your website. That's unpaid traffic that you have hitting your website all the time, every time. And Google likes that. Google likes that, and that helps with your rankings and getting found just by your list. Again, it's kind of that whole money is in the list kind of thing. It's driving that traffic and that messaging.
So increasingly now at the introductory phase, we still say MailChimp is a great tool, but we now say you should consider looking at a tool like ConvertKit. And ConvertKit, I always kind of positioned at the mid-range against tools like ActiveCampaign and a few others that are kind of have a little bit more wherewithal. But ConvertKit probably has the ability for you to, the nice thing about it is we always thought you would start with MailChimp. And one of the reasons we like MailChimp is how it allowed us to segment our audience. And we always looked at it as a stepping stone, a tool that we would purchase and then we would use until we grew out of it. And then we would transition into the next phase. And that's a nightmare time. I don't care who you are. The less times that you have to transition from one email service to another is good. And if you never have to do it in your whole career, you are a winner as far as I'm concerned, because your business goes on hold for a month at least. Well, and you at some point you're going, why the hell did we do this? I guarantee.
I think the thing is people jump around because there is so many, and then you never get to use the tool for really what it can be. And I know sometimes when you jump in, we all get excited because we're sold on some webinar that we saw to buy this product, or there was an offer presented to us. But the one thing that I can tell you is just take the time to do some of their webinars of that email service provider, because a lot of them have very quick tutorials. I also like ConvertKit's chat. They have a great chat. If I ever get stuck, I use chat. And they always have an answer, or they'll help me fix something, which is great. And it starts just kind of a baseline, $29 a month up to 1,000 subscribers. And then from there,
that's pretty affordable. And I like that. Now, by the way, we aren't affiliates for any of these products. I won't actually, like I use Infusionsoft, and they always want me to promote the platform, and because we use it very effectively. But I don't take any affiliate commission from them either, just because I honestly don't. Here's my philosophy on this, by the way. I'll and this might help and it might hurt. I don't know. My philosophy is you can't make the right decision on choosing any of these tools. That there's always going to be one feature or something that another tool is going to do better. And so it's impossible to make the perfect decision. But once you go and you say, I'm going to use this, you can make it the right decision by how you react after the purchase, by diving in with both feet, learning to use the tool effectively, learning every nuance and understanding intimately how it's going to work with your business. You turn it into the right decision by how you act after you purchase it. And they've all got the ability. I can tell you right now that our business would be in the exact same place if I had chosen Entreport instead of Infusionsoft back in the day. And if ConvertKit was available at that point and I'd chosen that tool, we would be in the exact same place, because I understand and hired somebody like April to help how the tool works. So don't lose sleep over it. I know this is, and I got to tell you, when I bought Infusionsoft, because it was quite expensive when I bought it, it was more than it is now. Yeah. And I couldn't afford it at that point in my business. I was like, there was a lot of anxiety in Steve getting that tool. And I didn't need to have that. I think if I'd had clarity of thought and understood that it was really my actions that would determine the success of the product with my business, that I could have reduced a lot of the stress. So I'm hoping that, if we do one thing today, that we kind of lower the temperature as far as how much concern you have if you're going to make the right or the wrong decision. You can make it the right decision.
Right.
Good. That's it. Sermon over. All right. So now let's talk about those mid-range products. Now let's talk about the kind of and I would probably put Constant Contact in there, but it's not a tool I like. Constant Contact is, I think,
you put it in mid-range.
Sorry, I don't know if it's mid-range. I think it's the perfect church tool. I think if you have a church mail list and you need something like that, your hand gets held through the whole thing. Am I wrong?
No, I don't. I think you are wrong. I think,
okay.
Well,
you
yes,
know it better than I do.
Yes and no. I think one of the things that Constant Contact has over those other kind of baseline tools is their customer service. I feel like it's definitely phone, chat. You're not waiting on long holds, and it doesn't matter what level you're paying, you get the same service. So that's the only thing that I do think. But and I would say, so kind of mid-level, let's talk about mid-level. Like Active Campaign is another tool, which I think is a great tool. I would consider them more mid-level, because once you get to the place where you're kind of beyond that beginner and you feel like you need more automation and some other bells and whistles, they have SMS text features. They have, they definitely have a marketing automation component. It's pretty affordable. When it's definitely affordable kind of at the baseline. And then once you get over like 1,000, it's going to run you, and add in some things, it's going to run you like between $70 to $150 and sometimes more. I had a client that was paying like $400 a month for them. That's the only thing I think is their downside, is I felt like they get expensive quick when your list grows.
Are you able to negotiate with them as you are with an Infusionsoft or somebody else?
So I personally didn't have the greatest experience with their customer service, and I was frustrated because, and I feel like I'm pretty well versed in different tools, and I felt like that was one of the harder ones for me and it could be my creative brain. I had a harder time working in their tool than I did in other tools.
And one thing that you should always know is, I think with most of these guys, what I was just mentioning to April, is you can negotiate with them quite often, even after you're a customer. If you, for instance, in Infusionsoft, and actually Louis, I love Louis' quote, I've been in Infusionsoft with 2011. It's like being in the mafia. You can't get out. It is difficult to transition out. But what you can do is you can go to them and you can say, look, my account is this, and I see you offering this to new people. How about taking care of the old people? And if you have a frank conversation with them, they will usually sharpen their pencil and cut you a better deal. And for longer term customers, they have to do that. And they've done it with us. So I would encourage anybody who has an account to take a look at what their current offers are, look at what your account is, and then ask them to sharpen their pencil a bit. Maybe there's a reason I'm not an Infusionsoft affiliate. I don't make money from them. They don't like all the advice I get.
Well, and the other thing to that is, once you get to some of these mid-level tools, when they start charging you a setup fee, there's typically partners that actually can help you set up and will give you. So I'm just going to throw. So like Infusionsoft, say they're going to charge you $1,000 or Entreport for a setup. And usually there's a partner that's going to give you much more than 4 hours of training that might charge you the same, or maybe even charge you a little bit more or a little bit less, but you're going to get more bang for your buck, and you're going to come away making sure from that partner, who's a small business owner like you, that you've learned the tool that you wanted to learn. So just a consideration.
I'm just going to push Diane's question out right now, because because I think this is an important point to understand for everybody right now. Her comment was, and we hear this over and over again, that Infusionsoft is Confusionsoft. People call it Confusionsoft because it's a difficult tool to use. I think personally that's a bad rap that Infusionsoft has. What we are doing when we talk about a full CRM like Infusionsoft is, because it's more than just the mail list manager we're talking about. It integrates our e-commerce and it integrates full sales funnels and a whole large campaigns where you're using the full power of their analytics to know who's opened an email. And if they've opened the email and read the email, then we move them into this funnel. And so the sophistication of this tool is very advanced. It doesn't matter what tool it is. That is a complex process. Building large sales funnels with full segmentation and reacting to people's actions and activities is a complex process. I don't care what tool it is, it's going to be complex when you use that. I don't think Infusionsoft is any more complex than any other program as far as that's concerned. And again, if you learn to use it, you can make it the right decision. Now,
but I do want to say that you are an anomaly. Steve is an anomaly to most. You're an anomaly because you took the time. I feel like you are.
Oh, okay.
So, yeah. Steve really takes the time. So before he actually him and I started working together, he really learned about Infusionsoft. So it can be confusing to some because there is so many little quirky things about, did you publish this? But I will say that Infusionsoft has improved over the past 3 years in the way that they build their campaigns to make it much more user-friendly for you. But again, they also have weekly webinars. They have webinars every week on some specific functionality in the tool, and they're short. Some are 30 minutes, some are an hour. And when you sign up for these providers, definitely take the time to learn them because that's going to make you better at bringing in revenue for your business.
Here's something, April. You say I'm an anomaly because I learned the tools before but there's 263 people here on live with us right now who are taking the time to learn about something to make a good decision about their business.
Yes.
It's my opinion, and I think that most of the people in this community are that anomaly. That if you understand the value and the importance, you will learn to use the tool yourself. Even though Infusionsoft would take too much time for me to manage our account myself now. It wouldn't be time well spent by me, but it's knowledge well earned for me to understand how it works so that I can have intelligent conversations with April, know exactly what's going on. And if April's unable to do something for some reason or something has to be fixed, and I can dive in and I know enough to be able to repair it. But most importantly, I understand what we can do with it so I can plan the rest of my business to take advantage of the tools and making sure that I'm not leaving opportunities behind. I think that's each one of our business, as a business owner, our responsibility to understand those tools. Right. And the nature of so many tools out there, so available to us, I think a lot of us just skim the surface of the tool and we never dive in. So that's a kind of I'm back on my soapbox.
But I would agree because that's why you're Dotto Tech, right?
That's right. I mean, I benefit from it too because I get to share with.
And it's like I use the example. My classes for social media, they're completely full. And when I do email marketing and list building, they're definitely significantly less because this community understands the value where so many others don't, which is great against your competition too. Don't forget that.
Now, it used to be when we talked about the high end, and we're going to skip right by the mid range because I think if you start with a ConvertKit now and follow us, you can skip and blow right by most of the mid range tools. I think it's really going to impact people like the Active Campaigns of the world. But at the higher end, and this isn't the really high end, but at the high end of the social marketer spectrum, we used to just talk about the big two. We used to talk about Infusionsoft, and we used to talk about Entreport, which used to be called Office Autopilot, I think, back in the day. But those two are kind of twins as far as the higher end online marketers toolkit. And we've chosen Infusionsoft here. And I've got some videos on why I chose Infusionsoft back in the day, and we'll probably do some more on it. And it's a good choice. But I think that there's a third one in, and we've had multiple people asking questions about it, and that is Kartra. And I think it slides in now as the third player in that space. And we should have a conversation about where each one of those sit. Now, I'm going to tell you right now, because it's the new kid on the block, everybody's going to love the ideas of Kartra. And Kartra does look really good. We actually, against my philosophy, have had a serious conversation here at Dotto Tech about switching over to Kartra. And there are some reasons that we would consider doing that, but we haven't done it. And it's going to be, if we do, I'll have more gray. This will go as gray as this. I can tell you right now. But Kartra, the strength of Kartra is it comes from real internet marketers through and through. The same people that make Webinar Jam that we're using here make Kartra. And one of the thing that I like most about Webinar Jam is how its backend integrates with all of our systems and how they understand how important it is for us to track and manage our relationship with every single person that's in the webinar. And that philosophy continues into Kartra. It's a very appealing option from that perspective. And April, you had a good look at it with me. What did you think?
I liked it. I liked that it's kind of an all-encompassing tool. I don't think we dived deep enough to know what other tools we'd have to use with it, but I liked that it had a lot of, I liked it. I liked it a lot. What I didn't like, the one thing I didn't like was that I feel like they try to sell you for $1 for 14 days to get you into the platform. And then the reality is when you start looking at the pricing, it's like ridiculously overpriced.
I felt it was a little on the high end as far as pricing goes. And that's one of the things that actually stopped me is my parsimonious nature is as expensive as Infusionsoft is, my initial install with Kartra would have been actually more expensive. And so I'm going, well, it's working now. Why would I change? Because there's not a lot of functionality advantage. It would be nice to have better integration with Webinar Jam, which we use so much. Yeah. But yeah, it ends up being a bit expensive. I think. Sorry?
I don't like, kind of like you don't like Facebook and trust Facebook. I don't like to trust one tool that has everything because I feel like I've given my life to it and my whole business.
That's true. And as was commented earlier, you feel like you're really entrenched when you do make these decisions. So switching once you're into something is a big challenge. Now, as far as Infusionsoft and Ontraport, the kind of the old timers in the space, I think that I really don't think that you can make a wrong decision by choosing either one of those. That again, it's going to come down to how well you apply. And how well whether or not you make it the right decision or not by your actions. And you've got clients with both.
Though, just so you know, I feel like Ontraport has a membership opportunity within their own platform, which Infusionsoft doesn't, and they also have SMS text included, which Infusionsoft doesn't, unless you're using another API integration.
So take a step back. Take a step back and explain those two things to us. First, the membership option. So creating a membership site where you have members in and you manage them. In Infusionsoft, we have to use a third-party product, and which will integrate with Infusionsoft, but we have an additional fee every month for that.
Yeah, so Ontraport it's a WordPress-based membership site that's included. So you can create a membership, and it's integrated really nicely. It also has the SMS text, where if you are doing a webinar or you're list building and you're on the stage and you're speaking, you're at a place, you can have a text to join right from the SMS piece, which is built into Ontraport, which I definitely feel is
I love that idea, but does it work North America wide or internationally?
So it only works North America.
Does it work in Canada as well as the United States?
I believe it does, actually. It works in Canada.
We're not part of you yet.
Yeah, and that is a challenge with a lot of the APIs with American softwares, is that the SMS texting, like Lead Pages, Infusionsoft, the ones that they integrate are typically here in the US.
Yeah. So that's why we've never really engaged with them, because I haven't been able to take advantage of. So that's kind of a hole. So let's do this now. Let's flip the channel and let me just check my notes here to see if we've covered everything.
The only thing we didn't talk about was GDPR, which we should just have a brief conversation about that.
You mentioned GDPR right now. We should have done that right at the beginning.
Yeah. So I know everybody, it was a big, what is GDPR? It's the General Data Protection Regulation that rolled out in the UK. We actually, I think, had a webinar on it. We talked about it. Yep. I think it's one of those things that whether you are in Europe or if you're in the US, that it's good practice to be implementing the GDPR guidelines. And it's basically about personal data. And making sure that people know that their data is protected. A lot now you see people have added to their website cookies that you're they're opting in that their cookies will be tracked on your website. It's all about privacy, and especially in certain sizes of companies, actually have to have a data officer. And what did we do here? We, Infusionsoft had some GDPR stuff that we implemented, but you also added it to adding a privacy policy.
We added the privacy policy, and we added cookies. We added a notification of tracking to our website, which we've actually disabled right now because it was breaking things, and we're trying to figure out why. So it caused some technical issues.
If somebody called us on it.
Yes. Yeah, and fair enough. But when it causes your website to stop responding properly, you have to kind of work our way through.
You know, I think the one thing with GDPR is with anything, when you're building your email list, is that you should have permission anyway. So, and you should be telling people what you're going to do with their email address, how you're going to contact them, how you're going to communicate, if you're going to communicate weekly, if you're going to communicate periodically, and set those expectations, and that you don't sell your list, and that not everybody has access to their data. Permission-based email marketing is where it's at. You never want to buy a list or anything like that because you don't want to be a spammer. You want to definitely have people in your list that want to be in your list, because if they want to be in your list, they're more likely to open your emails and execute on your call to actions.
Yes. Now, we did have a few other things that I wanted to touch on. Just how are we doing for time? Oh, wow.
I know it went by fast.
Yeah, there's lots going. I wanted to make sure that I covered a couple of other things, which was talking about your content strategy too, which is now I realize that we've kind of that I probably bit off more than we could chew as far as this webinar goes. But all of these tools, building your list, ultimately have to have a focus of how do you build your list. So they all have to fold into your own online content strategy, whether you're doing blog posts or vlogs or PDF downloads or an ebook, of the ways that you engage your audience and invite them to communicate with you. So you have to have I think you should have both evergreen list building strategies and episodic list builders. So the evergreen list building is like, for example, I'll use us in that example, Steve's Toolkit. Any of you who have ever downloaded my toolkit to understand what tools I use, that's a list builder that we then get you into our email list as a result, because people are constantly interested in that topic. So that's something which is evergreen. It's always happening. And then episodic list builders are more like what we do with these webinars, where we have a single topic where we invite people to join us, and then we follow up with them with that topic. Now, we don't typically market very aggressively here at Dottotech. You're not certainly going to get a sales email from us trying to get you to buy our course on email list builders. Although we could do that. That could be our business model. We could be doing that. Sorry, I should have had my phone on silent. There we go. Now but the phone keeps ringing even though I turned the ringer off. How about that? But so you want to have a strategy of both evergreen and episodic, and of course most of that stuff is going to be focused from whatever's happening on your website and driving your traffic from your website. So that is all things that you want to consider. And we're going to get to the Q&A, but I had two things that I wanted to give you as final food for thought. Think long term with this entire process, especially in your segmentation, making sure that as you collect email addresses, you're putting people into silos so that you can identify them later on, so that you can have proper conversations with them. And always, building your list is a very selfish thing as far as we're concerned. It's building our security for our business. And I don't mean selfish from the negative sense, but it's all about building the security of your business. Pay attention to the value of your list to your community, not to you. Make sure that you don't abuse your list, and that when people do sign up, that you have a strategy in place that shares value with them in whatever the appropriate frequency is that your business determines. So not just sending out sales letters and not just sending out offers, but instead sending out valuable information. One of the most valuable things we do for our email list is we send out notifications of these free webinars where we're having all of these trainings and letting you folks know. And our weekly newsletter that talks about whatever topics we're doing videos on. And then very occasionally we then sell something, or we use our mail list to move people into one of our revenue properties downstream. But for the most part, what would you say? Probably 4 out of, even more, maybe 6 out of every 8 7 out of every 8 emails that we send have nothing to do with anything that's going to earn Dottotech money. It's more just letting our community know and adding value to them. Do you agree?
I would agree. Yes,
Good.
I would agree.
So,
and I think you definitely need a good mix of content. The one thing before, I know we're going to go to Q&A, but I just want to touch on ways we're talking about building your list, and we kind of didn't touch on other ways, like a pop-up on your website. Like,
oh yeah, the mechanisms, yeah.
You know, the mechanisms. I just want to kind of ways for you to build your list are super important in your content plan and kind of that overall marketing strategy. Consider a pop-up on your website. Consider doing webinars. Those are great. Not only does it share your expertise, but it's a great list builder. Think about white papers in ebooks for downloads that you can do, and you can typically promote them on social. You could put them on your website. You could run Facebook ads to them. But and I mentioned before, SMS text. So text to join options within some tools. Those are great ways to build your list. But your list, and always building that and looking for opportunities, especially on the social media side. I can't stress that enough. I think that's a huge missed opportunity that businesses fall into, where they're so worried about that engaging community and building that fan base, but they forget that they don't own that space. So definitely look at all the opportunities that you can do to build your email list. And I'm sure you have something to add to that. I
do, but we're going to get to the Q&A because we're already 10 minutes left in the webinar. And I haven't even done my business here, which is reminding people and sending out a great big thank you to all of our patrons at Patreon, and reminding people how we are actually able to provide these free webinars every week. So first of all, Dottotech is a community-funded channel. We're supported through the generosity of our patrons at the crowdfunding site Patreon. So to all of our patrons, a big hello. How the heck are you guys doing this fine day? Thank you very much. So for those of you who don't know what I'm talking about, Patreon is people join us on Patreon, and they provide some financial support for Dottotech so that we can continue to provide these webinars and other content. But these webinars that we do every week, this is the 72nd tutorial webinar that we've delivered for free here at Dottotech. Now, this webinar, once it's complete today, we'll leave it public for everybody to view for the next 2 days. And then after that, we archive it into our Webinar Wednesday archives, which is there for the exclusive use of our patrons, of the people who support us at Patreon. So I encourage you to drop by our page at patreon.com/Dottotech. Take a look. We ask for $10 a month to support us. And for that, you get access to all of these tutorial webinars, which we often flesh out with additional content and additional value. Plus, you get a 50% reduction in all of our regular online courses and other little perks as well as having direct access to ask questions to us, etc. So I encourage you to jump onto Patreon, have a look. And for those of you who are our patrons, thank you so much. We appreciate your support so very, very much. There. Let us.
Oh, but you have to tell them you met a Patreon in person the other day.
Oh, I did. I met one of our patrons in person. I've got her name here. It's her name is, there she is. She was lovely. Barbara Rempel. I met her in Calgary yesterday? Monday night. I was in Calgary. I was given a speaking engagement in Calgary, and we had a little meetup mainly for YouTube creators. But Barbara does healthy oils. I'll be sending out the picture in the newsletter. But we met, and she got her hug in person. One of the perks is you get a hug if you see me in person, if you want, if you feel comfortable with that. And she got her hug, and I got my hug. She's awesome. Good. All right. Laura says, I find segmentation difficult. We all do, Laura. I understand. It's something you just have to do. You just have to do it. There's no easy way, is there?
No, I think it's really trying to understand your target audience and kind of parsing out your products and services that you offer. So, I do a lot of like Facebook, Twitter, those types of training. So I use that as my guide for some of the things like what am I talking about all the time, or what product, and just kind of make a list, and that list grows. And sometimes I have segmentations that I've segmented and I don't use them. But I think when you start immediately, it's much better than going back once your list is at 10,000 to go back and try to segment those.
We just got to do patron. Rich, thank you.
Thanks, Rich.
Thank you. David says, for newsletter, how many emails a week should I send out? 1, 2, 3 once a week? How many is too many?
So your analytics is going to really tell you how many there is. I think first off, make sure that when people sign up for your list, you set the expectation of how often you'll be sending your communication. So if you're going to send out weekly, let them know it's weekly, if it's bi-weekly, or if it's every other day, because nothing's worse than signing up for a list and then all of a sudden you get an email every single day and you're like, wait a minute, I only wanted monthly. So make sure that you communicate that and watch your analytics. Your analytics are going to tell you whether or not you're over communicating. If you have open rates that are, 35%, and then all of a sudden they start dropping down to 28% and continue to drop, you're over communicating.
Rolando says, what about MailLite or Email Octopus as a substitute for ConvertKit? I'm going to deal with that and say we can't speak specifically about all of these, and I can tell you I have no experience with either of those. You're just going to have to make your decisions on this case based on the sales pages, the information that you get from those people, the webinars that they put on. But also, if you're making a decision, look for their Facebook groups and see what kind of comments are going on from their community that uses them in their Facebook support groups. That will help you with those decisions. Okay. Chuck says, oh, this is an interesting. How can I update my MailChimp list? Can I upload a new list to MailChimp? I think he says MailChimp instead of Chimpmail, and have it eliminate duplicates. List hygiene. Speak briefly about that.
List hygiene is on you. You can upload. So what happens is you can upload a new list. So say you have an existing list, you upload a new list. Yes, it's going to put it into the same contact record. However, if that person is in multiple lists, if that person's in multiple lists and you kind of click all to send an email, it will only get, so let me back up. If you have one general list and you upload and keep uploading and it's the same one exact email, yes, it'll dedupe it for you. However, if you have multiple lists, which a lot of these service providers have up to 100 different list segmentations or more, it'll update that contact record with the same email address. But if you decide to send out an email to list A today and an email to list B tomorrow, it's not going to dedupe and recognize that that person was on the other list from yesterday. So it does some minimal deduping, but I would encourage you to keep your list hygiene. Try to list hygiene before you import it. Tools like Infusionsoft, actually in the higher end tools, do have a deduping option, but in those in MailChimp, they don't. And actually, I think MailChimp is one of the hardest to dedupe as a service provider, to be honest. So definitely clean it before.
Okay, so I've just been weeding through some of the questions, and many of you would ask what we think of Infusionsoft, what we think of Kartra, and there's been multiple questions. So I think we've dealt with those already. Lynn asks, where do we find information on compliance? What's the best resource for that?
So I would say, obviously, within the service provider that you're looking at, there's definitely a compliance piece on their website. So if you search compliance, they're going to give you what specifically it is about their expectations. Compliance is in general, you are compliant if you are collecting email addresses and collecting them based on permission. I can tell you that non-compliance is any bot list or any scraping, like the LinkedIn data scrapers. Those are not permission-based email marketing. Think of compliance as permission-based. But all email service providers, if you search it, they'll have kind of the general rules on compliance.
This is a long, but I think really valuable question. David, I have about 30,000 old leads that have opted into my newsletter over the past 20 years, but he's not contacted many of them in, unfortunately, 10 to 25 years. So he's using Zoho campaigns, which is actually a tool that I think is a really viable option. The Zoho suite is a really interesting and compelling space. I don't know enough about it to speak in detail, but everything I've seen, I like, just as an aside. At any rate, his question is he wants to kind of refresh the list, is if I'm reading between the lines. He wants to breathe life back into it. But obviously, he doesn't really have permission to email to these people anymore. So he's asking what he should do again in order to refresh this list. Now, I've got an opinion.
Okay.
Do you want me to share it first, April?
Yeah.
Send out one email to them with a option for them to opt in to a fresh list that you start from scratch. And once you sent out one email to them, you might consider a second one to the people who haven't opened the first one, but then delete that entire list and only work with your new fresh list. What's your opinion?
I think that's great advice. I would say that general practice is that if you have an old list like that, typically an email service provider will red flag it immediately. And then they're going to ask you, you'll get a flag that you need to speak with a compliance officer with their company. And then they're going to start asking you questions of where you collected the email address, how old the list is. And I can tell you that if your list is, if you ever say it's more than 6 months old, they're not going to let you use that list. Even at 6 months old, sometimes depending upon the service provider, they actually may run a campaign where they require that whole list to physically opt back in. So I think it's a great idea to send that, and if Zoho is going to allow that. But however, the only thing is that with a list that size, if you get a lot of spam complaints, they may then change their mind in you being able to use their tool because it brings down deliverability like that, especially lots of bounces and spam counts. And typically, email service providers, it's 1 in 1,000. So if you have a list of 10,000 and you had 10 spam complaints or higher, that's considered a red flag. So just keep that in mind as 1 in 1,000. So
you've got 30,000 leads there, just kind of working through it. I might
I would segment that list.
I might try 3,000. And send out the test. And what you're saying is you're going to have to give up that list. I think you're going to have to give up that list completely and start with a fresh list. And you're going to start with a much smaller list. There's no doubt about it. But there's no way that you can breathe life into it without running afoul of spam. But getting people to re-opt in and opt in fresh to a new list. That's the key. So the reason that we're suggesting that you do like 3,000 or maybe even 1,000 emails to start is it allows you to look at the analytics to see what the open rate is, to see how they reacted to it, and to play with things like the subject and the copy that you're sending out to deal with how your list reacts and how kind of the energy that you put into it. Is that fair?
Compliance, if compliance shuts you down, they're going to shut down that one list. And they're not going to but also what you may want to consider in that email is, hey, sorry that I haven't emailed you. Offer them a download or a checklist for them to opt into while you're doing that. So then you'll have clear, fresh opt-ins for those that open that email. So just something to consider. Okay, there we go.
David says here, we're past the top of the hour. We're going to continue on for about 10 minutes or maybe 15 minutes as we get through the last of these questions. And there's quite a few questions. We'll do our best to get through them. But for those of you who have to go now, we've reached the top of the hour. So thank you very much. You can catch the rest of the webinar on replay if you want to pick it up later on. And there will be a webinar recap that we'll be posting on YouTube, which will be like a 10-minute version of the webinar. So keep your eyes open for that. We will send you a follow-up email ourselves talking about this tomorrow with the webinar replay, with this replay available to you, along with any resources that we've kind of pulled from it. So keep your eye open for that. Next week we are going to be joined by Sean Canal, and we're going to be talking about starting a YouTube channel. Sean is a YouTube celebrity. He's one of the best YouTubers I know. He has a book out on starting a YouTube channel and making money on YouTube, and we're going to be having that. So keep your eye open to join us next week for our next webinar Wednesday. April, thank you so much you've been outstanding today. So for anybody that has to go, have fun storming a castle. Everybody else, we will do our best to get through as many of these questions as we can.
I'm also going to I have a link to a list cleaner that you can actually run through while you're.
Okay, so David says, I get very long pitch emails that go on for page after page. He hates them. Would you suggest using shorter emails with calls to action and click links to find out? I think that those long sales letters are yesterday's news. I don't think that they do it much for us anymore. I think people have a much shorter attention span, and the long form sales letter probably is very limited appeal. April?
I would agree, and I would just watch how many clickable links you put in your email. You know, the more links you have, the less people click, believe it or not. Less is more always in an email. And your goal is really to drive them to your webpage because that's organic traffic. But less is definitely more, and I would keep your links to 3 and under if you can.
David asks, how do you build your list with webinars? Would you not already have their email addresses to invite them into the webinar? Yes. I mean, 90, maybe 95% of the people who attend this webinar are from our list already, and they already know us. But then we promote the webinar in other places. People share it. They discover it through other places. So the webinar is the product that builds the list because people come, they discover Dottotech, decide that they like our style. And so that's how it works for us. It's a very slow and gradual, steady process. Oh, I love this. Adele says, and I'm going to let you handle this one. Oh, I lost it. Where did Adele go? Oh, I moved her. She asked, what is our thought of using Facebook chatbots to build your list?
So I think it's another opportunity to build lists. It's one of those things that I think sometimes the general Facebook user finds it annoying. But that's my personal opinion because I find it kind of annoying. But I do think it can be a viable piece for the right audience, depending upon your audience and what you're offering. But I feel like it's a little bit clickbaity, to be honest. But that's just, again, my personal opinion. But I have a client that does use it. And he's had some success with it. He hasn't had overly huge success with it. But I think it's another way to build your list. So I don't think if you use them and you know how to use them, I don't think it's a bad option. I just think it's a slower process of building lists.
Bassam asks, can we please type in the link where the archives of the previous webinars are? That's available to you if you're one of our patrons at Patreon. So if you're a patron, just drop us a note in Patreon and we'll make sure you have all of the links you need. We actually host all of the webinar replays in Thinkific. We've got them all hosted in the LMS, in the learning management system. Arthur commented that it's whether or not if you sell physical products or information products is a consideration as you purchase as well, as you make your decision on CRMs. And indeed, like ones that are like for point of sale, if you want to have an inventory of products, etc., that makes a big difference as well.
Right.
Laura, what is a good open rate? What a great question.
That's a great question. 18 to 25% is considered a good open rate. But the one thing is that you don't really want to get stuck on that number. And the reason being is that some people have window pane view on their Outlook, which is considered an open. So if they're scrolling their email, they might not have looked at it. You have mobile phones. Most email service providers in their analytics will tell you mobile versus desktop open rates. But I feel like the most important analytic is going to be your click-through, because that's where you can see what your audience is interested in. So if you have a product, and it's always fun when you're selling a product, or you're starting a webinar, and you put it out to your list, and you're like, oh, how many people click on it? Which the number could be phenomenal, and then you have this great registration, or maybe everybody clicked, and then your landing page or that web page they went to, they didn't take action on. So I think that the click-through is the most important, but 18 to 25% is considered average.
Okay. Nicole says, I have an email list that I email a monthly invite to for an event. I'd like to now add those names to a newsletter list. How can I track back to get the permission? I'm not sure you need to if you already have permission to market to them. I think that you can include them in the newsletter, and you might. My inclination would be to start sending the newsletter and to tell them that this is your intention to send the newsletter, and then give them an option to opt out if they want.
So an email service provider would challenge you on that, just so you know.
Would they?
Yep.
Because they opted in for that one reason. That's a good point.
Because they opted in for that one reason. So if you
send them an invite. You send them an invite, right?
Yeah, I would say if you can on your event registration, make it clear that they're going to be opted in then. So if they're signing up for an event, like if you're using a landing page or you're using on your website a button, make sure that it says that they will be also added for upcoming newsletters and events. And so it's kind of it's there in black and white if you ever get questioned. But unfortunately, it's not kind of in the rules. The one thing that email service providers do tell you, though, that customers are presumed relationships. So if you have proof that they're a customer, technically you can email them. But from an event perspective, though, they just signed up for that event.
Yeah. So if you are sending them that monthly thing, just make sure that for the next couple of months you say, by the way, I'm going to be doing a newsletter, and make sure that you include that opt-in there as well, so that you can slowly build that list and you can build those options. That would be a good way. Don't follow my first advice. Bad advice.
No, I mean, we all do it. I'm just saying, like, if it came down to compliance. So,
no.
And I'm giving you hints. If you talk to compliance, do not say, you know what I mean? Or in a lot of them, Infusionsoft will ask you where it came from. I never click event. I always put the link to the website that they signed up on the website.
Eileen said, so I heard double options not as much needed, that double options are passe. Still pretty important.
Yeah, I mean, I think that double opt-ins, what I think about double opt-ins is that your list might be your growth might be a little bit smaller with double opt-ins, but it's definitely more quality email addresses. Those people absolutely want to be in your list. So I think you have to gauge what you're trying to accomplish with that sign up.
David said that Zoho has allowed him to send to the 30,000 to clean it out. I still think that it would be worthwhile you segmenting that into smaller segments and then testing each one as you go along, so that you can, by the time you've done 2 or 3 mailings to maybe 2,000 or 3,000 people, you'll have a really good sense of how people are reacting to that list, and you'll have been able to modify it so that when you send to the bulk of them, you're going to have the most impact.
Yeah, I would
agree.
agree.
David says, good info on the open rate, and it was. What's a good click-through rate? And what a compelling question that is.
8 to 12% is considered a good click-through rate.
So based on the open rate.
Based on your open rate, yes.
Not of your whole list, yeah.
Yeah, based on your open rate. One of the things, some of the email service providers have, like a tool called Robly. They have what they call Open Gen. So, and we do this manually with Infusionsoft. So I kind of maximizing open rates and click-through rates is that when we do Webinar Wednesday, we send it out on Tuesday. And then on Tuesday's email, people that didn't open the email, we resend to those non-opens. So those are kind of great little tactics to get better, I feel like better open rate statistics, as well as better click-through rates, because you're kind of retargeting that audience, and segmentation makes a big difference on that.
Yeah, and Catherine says, to send an email to a new opt-in in Canada, don't we have to use double opt-in? That's part of the Canada spam laws, the CAN spam laws, is that you're supposed to have that, indeed. But many people still don't. You know what? At the end of the day, and you build your systems to be in compliance, but it's the spirit of how you manage your community that determines whether or not you're a spammer. If you build a community earnestly with opting in with value and provide what people are expecting, and continue to send them information that they expect and aren't spamming them, you're going to be fine. It's only when people start to complain that you're going to run afoul of it. So following the guidelines is essential. It's absolutely essential. But even more important is the spirit of how you're conducting your business. And if you're not a spammer, you won't be flagged as such. Is that fair?
Quality, yeah, absolutely. And I would rather have quality over quantity, because quality is going to be my referral engine, and they're going to be the people that I want in my list and in my community. Because they like what I offer. So I feel like quality is definitely over quantity.
Skipper says, and it's actually a really good point, and unfortunately not good news. Telephone conversation. Hi, Mom, want to be on my mailing list? Sure, honey. Will this be approved? But you can't opt people in by phone anymore. You've got to have the audit trail.
Yeah, absolutely. And I can tell you that in compliance, if you say you had a paper sign up, they're going to ask for it. Sometimes they'll ask you to see those paper signups. Like if you were at a trade show or something like that and you collected business cards, they will want to see how they opted in. So it sounds ridiculous, but they try. And it actually, if you think about it, it's for the benefit of all of us because it's about getting deliverability of our emails to the people that want our emails. So although it's annoying and it is to the benefit of us. We want our end users to get our stuff.
So if you had a sheet that says sign up for our mail list at the top of the sheet, and then you had first name, last name, email address, and you were entering those people, you scan that image in and you store that image because you might be asked to use it. Now, that would be a legitimate way to sign people up for your mail list, but you keep that document.
Yep, absolutely.
Fair point. And with that, I think we're going to wrap things up. I think we're 15 minutes over. It's been, boy, we've sure shared a lot. I think that this topic was more, I was more ambitious with what we wanted to cover. I was going to get into, in my imagination was going to get into talking about what opt-ins might look like and some great ideas for lead generation and all that sort of stuff. But just the mechanism of email lists.
If you guys have questions that weren't answered, you can email info@dottotech.com. I'm happy to answer them. I know there were some that probably weren't answered, but I'm happy to answer them after. I have a webinar at 3 though, so just so you know, I won't be till later that I answer them. But
yeah, you've got more work to do. All right, listen, folks. Thanks so much for your engagement today. This has been a good one, and David, thank you. It says one of our best webinars to date. I appreciate that. To all of our patrons, again, thank you so much. For our new patrons, welcome aboard. April, you did yeoman's work today. Thank you. You made my job easy. I just had to guess, and you answered the real question.
You do questions, so thank you. Thanks, guys. I appreciate it. This was fun.
Keep your eye open for the replay tomorrow. Join us next week when we've got Sean Cannell on, and Sean is he's one of the top guys that I know in the business. A great guy, and he really knows his stuff. I'm looking forward to having him on board. That's it. Till next time. Have fun storming the castle.
Bye, guys. Thank you.